Mahloy. He's a junior developer. He's been in the industry. How long have you been in the industry?
Professionally, a month.
Okay.
We'll leave it at that. Yeah.
So yeah, man. You mind telling us what got you interested in coding and what were you doing before you got in the industry?
So I actually had I was hanging out over at some family's house, and they had a friend over, and they're like, "Oh yeah, you'll they're introducing him before he came over. It's like, oh, you'll love him. He's in the Bay Area. He does coding." I'm like, "Oh, that's cool. I don't really have any interest in that," so I thought, and he walked me through like HTML, CSS. I'm like, this is actually really cool and seemingly straightforward. Of course, HTML and CSS. It's not it can have complexity to it, but he showed me like the bare bones, basic, like just little breadcrumbs. So he showed me that, and then he showed me like some vanilla JavaScript, and then after a few weeks of doing that, I enrolled in a boot camp, and I was like, okay, this is definitely something I can see myself doing. Flash forward a few years later, and several job applications later, we're developing professionally. Um, in the company I'm at now, we were talking about this earlier. We use Vue on the front end, and then we use a .NET, C# .NET on the back end. It's banking, a lot of banking clients, and they seem to want to stay with what they already have.
Mhm.
And we could talk about just that for like an hour, but it's a really good company to work for from what I've seen so far.
Yeah, it seems like you had the typical experience most newbies in the industry have. They have to apply to hundreds of companies, go through countless rounds of interviews. How did you keep yourself like mentally focused, after all the rejections?
So while I was doing that, my industry was sales, and it was door-to-door sales, and I was self-employed in door-to-door sales. So it's like rejection was just, I mean, that was a daily thing. It was adding one more rejection to the several other rejections. So it really wasn't necessarily a need to. I guess it was different for me just because I was so used to it. Because in sales, 80 to 90 something percent is rejection. But still, after seeing like hundreds of I had this Excel spreadsheet, and it had like all these companies I applied for, the link, and then it was like red, 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 red. So seeing that, that was kind of discouraging. So to stay motivated, I stopped tracking them. Simply put, just because you see red, and it's just it's bad color psychologically speaking, and it's discouraging. But to keep myself motivated, I got on LinkedIn, which ultimately led me to this role. But just seeing a bunch of people, it's like getting I'm excited to announce, I'm happy to announce, just seeing those posts, seeing their work on GitHub. I'm like, okay, my work is about where theirs is. I'm next in line to get a job. That's kind of, just had to stick with it.
Roger, did you find your experience when you first got in the industry to be similar, or did you get a job immediately?
No, it took me some time to get the job. It's honest. I graduated in 2020, so the industry was not good back then because of the
Me too.
COVID
Absolutely.
and everybody's layoffs and everything. I would say it is harder for boot camps because they don't have the necessary, I would say, the necessary basics for them to get into the companies. Like even though they have all the GitHub links and everything, I personally don't think the boot camp is teaching the people how to interview or the interview questions basically. They're teaching them like okay, day-to-day work, like how to use Git, how to use this, but interview is a whole different game.
Are you referring to things like leak code questions or technical interviews?
Not just that, like even normal questions, like if I ask you like hey, how to do this in React, how to do that in React, I don't think
Mm.
the interview, they don't like make you ready for the interview, they make you ready for the job. That's how they even like advertise, I guess. Get the job, like this is how you're going to do it in the actual job, but I need to go to the interview to get to the job though. So I
Hmm.
need to practice for the interview, the job comes later.
Patrick, do you feel like your boot camp prepared you both on the interview and the job side?
I feel like it prepared me. I don't think it prepared me on the interview side. We did have some questions. It was cool because in each module it would have like, this is something you should know for an interview. They may ask you this. I remember we did like the fizz buzz, exercise. We went through that, which everyone loves fizz buzz, but I've never used it in an interview. So um, I guess the most preparation I received for interviews was just asking TAs and the instructor what their process was like. And I'm in Virginia, by the way, so I guess it's regional. It's different. A lot of us we start in .NET and then we eventually get back to JavaScript. But I remember I was talking to some of my TAs and they're like, yeah, so it's just a take home interview. Some people they only really do whiteboards, and if they do, it's nothing crazy because it's like you have the meme of it's like this meme. I'll have to find it, but basically you have the job itself, and it's like a guy like kicking a ball or something, and then you have the technical interview, and it's like some guy trying to decode the matrix, and it's like okay, yeah, so it tracks perfectly. But to answer your question, it was really like I felt like I had to like pursue the knowledge required to understand the interview process, and then it took a lot of trial and error of actually interviewing to learn how to interview, if that makes sense.
Did so while you were learning, right? I think you said React, like you learned React, like Stack at your boot camp.
That's correct.
So how did that turn into you getting a job, like your current job? Because I know that interview, like boot camps are pretty focused on a single thing. Like if they say React, like they're focused on just teaching you React. But when you go out there in the industry, they may ask you a different thing. They may ask you Python. They may ask you this. Like, did those skills that help like transfer to this new languages?
So yeah, React definitely has transferred into learning Vue. There's some different ways with how the data binding works um, that are different that I'm learning how to do. Like you have to send emits in order to pass properties or props back to from the child component to the parent component. But it was the boot camp was advertised as a full stack boot camp, which I use that in quotes because I don't think you can really be a true full stack developer and like an individual contributor per se. I'm definitely using the wrong terminology here, but after just doing 6 months of educational work, you can't know the entire iceberg that is back end development. But they did brush up on a lot of topics, and we built full stack projects. And I think I know what led me to this job was the design work I did because they're looking for someone that could do like styling. They had experience with like Tailwind and CSS frameworks like that. So they're looking for that. I happen to have that, and then working with Robert Half, the staffing company I'm with, we all kind of just met up that way. But I think the boot camp did help me more than just learning React. I think if I learned just React, I would have been hurt because again, the company that I'm working for now, they hired me because they're looking for someone with some kind of design specs or skills, however you want to put that.
Yeah.
So yeah, man. When you first got in the industry on your first job, did it take you a while to acclimate to everything? Like, did you feel the imposter syndrome? Like, I don't know if I can really do this. It's like so much information.
Yeah, so I'm definitely see imposter syndrome. That's a funny one that you say that because it's like I come from a musical background. Like I've been playing classical guitar since I was like 8 years old, so I'm not used to like struggling this much. Not that I haven't struggled ever, because classical guitar is a very challenging thing at a higher level. Um, but it's a challenging thing. So just feeling that uncomfortable professionally, for 40 hours a week and you get a paycheck for that, it's a strange concept for me right now. But I guess there is a little imposter syndrome there, but I do have affirmations like from my manager and my boss. They're great, and they'll tell me, it's like, hey, so I can see that you're visually frustrated that you are not understanding or not able to do this without assistance right now. It will get better. It will get easier. Our stack isn't changing, so just take your time and learn it, and you'll be good. Because right now they have me working on like a back of house admin project, and it's like backlogged from several years. So it's one of those things, when it gets finished, it'll get finished kind of thing. So that working without a deadline for right now is actually very good for that, uh, for the imposter syndrome and all that good stuff. But yeah, no, it's been a journey, because you go through the boot camp, you're somewhat proficient, then you build some projects outside the boot camp. It's like, okay, I'm really starting to get somewhere. You venture off and you start, like I learned Next.js outside the boot camp, and I learned a few other CSS frameworks. I'm like, okay, so we're really getting somewhere. I can see where this can go. And then you get into the professional environment is completely different. You have documentation, and it's just a lot. It's been a lot this month. I still feel like I'm drinking from a fire hose, is what they say at work.
What do you think the boot camp should have done better? Could have
What
done
do I
better, I
think?
guess.
That is a really good question. I think we would have benefited if we saw, because I mean, we did like the Kanban boards, kind of like using Jira. We did stuff like that. We did like the technical specs. We did. I'm trying to think of things that they could have done better. I really would have loved to have seen like a day in the life of a developer kind of thing, like not like a field trip per
Hmm.
se, but if we had like, this is what an average day of development looks like. I mean, it could have been like just notes that we could have read or something like that, because the boot camp, it sets you out, it teaches you how to code, but it doesn't teach you how to be a professional developer. It's like a professional developer, you have to deal with documentation, you have to interpret client needs and things of that nature. There are just so many aspects of development in a professional landscape that I don't think were covered in the boot camp, and I don't necessarily think that they could. But I'm not sure about that last one. I just think that there's a critical disconnect between learning how to code and then marketing that skill professionally.
Do you think having a outside mentor would have helped you out?
Oh, absolutely. I had a mentor, still have one.
Yeah.
He's great. He's the guy that I mentioned earlier from the Bay Area. He's a Bay
Yep.
Area development veteran. If it weren't for him, I would be lost. I would probably still be on the job hunt, or still, I would be behind somewhere. But just having ideas to bounce off of from him. And then I was actually at a some kind of reunion show for a band up in Richmond, and I met this guy. He does the whole digital nomad thing. So he's actually out in Colombia right now, but I met him when he was stateside, and he's a senior developer over at Kava. So I've been networking with him, and just bouncing ideas off of him. So having people like that between the boot camp, or even during the boot camp, but between the boot camp and getting that first job is critical. It's like you can have a periscope to see what's around. If you're a submarine, you have a little periscope. I'm trying to come up with a with a metaphor here, but having some kind of lifeline to reel you in into, like, you know give you some kind of a
Mhm.
reality check is absolutely critical, because it's easy. At least it was easy for me to get kind of lost in thoughts of, am I good enough? I see all these job listings say they want 10 years of React. I don't have that, which, by the way, now React is 10 years old, so they can ask that and it's valid. But that's a tangent for another day. But yeah, no, having a mentor is absolutely critical for anyone that doesn't have a mentor. Network on LinkedIn. If you need help networking, hit me up. That was like my thing. That's how I got this job. That's how I met Kevin. It's huge. It was my number one thing last year. That it changed my life.
Oh yeah, no, networking is absolutely huge. Like so many doors open up just from knowing the right person. But like in regards to your mentor, what are some of the better lessons that he taught you that are really relevant to your job?
So it's kind of like when you get a job, you don't necessarily, I guess flashback to when you were younger, you got your first job. It could have been at like, could have been fast food. It could have been a restaurant. You don't necessarily know what a good job is, what a bad job is, but over time you understand, okay, these are what I don't like. These are things that I don't like about this job. These are things that I do like. And then it's just like from then until retirement, you're essentially trying to filter out the bad and maintain the good. And I think having his perspective of, okay, this is what a good senior manager is going to do. This is what, or a senior developer, this is what a good management team is going to do for you. This is what you should, just setting like milestones for me and telling me exactly what I should expect. And that is just, again, it's critical because I would otherwise have no idea what to expect, what to know. But I will say, there is a bad thing when it comes to that because you get a lot of opinions and you develop opinions based on their opinions. And then you start to think, oh, well, .NET is clearly antiquated, it's clearly horrible, and blah, 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 blah. And, people have opinions on it. I don't, I'm too new to really care about .NET being good or bad. It's proven and it works and it's employing me right now. So that's how I feel about it. But in terms of the opinions, though, that's probably the only detriment to having a mentor because they may steer you in what would otherwise be the wrong direction away from an opportunity. Because and we're veering off topic here, but if I took his advice to a T and I did not, and I completely avoided .NET related jobs, I would still be on the job hunt because regionally on the East Coast, it's a lot of enterprise and banking industry stuff, and it's a lot of legacy. I mean, our legacy code is in VB.NET. So, I mean, if I took his advice, I would still be hunting for jobs that I probably wouldn't be eligible for. So, a little give and take there.
Yeah, exactly. Mentors aren't perfect. We all have our opinions, and what may work for one may not work for the other. So yeah, I definitely see where you're coming from with that. Did you have any questions for us? I know you kind of wanted to ask us a few questions.
I've got, let's see, what time is it? I got plenty of questions. I would say, so y'all are both in Texas, is that right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
we're both in the DFW area.
it's cold.
Okay. Okay. What is the predominant tech stack that's used out there? Because I know, like West Coast, you have the MERN stack. It's very React heavy. East Coast, we used Angular at one point. I think people are kind of getting rid of Angular because between 2 and 3, your whole code base changes and it's a nightmare. But we still use legacy code that's in the VB C Sharp realm. But I guess in Texas, being that you have Austin, you have Dallas, and I've just heard so many mixed things as far as like the technology there and like what people typically use. So I was just curious on what y'all use at y'all's company.
You want to go first, Raja?
Yeah, we use React at my company, but I would say instead of thinking it as like East Coast, West Coast, I would say think of it as a company because if you look at Amazon, Amazon uses a lot of Java in the backend, like a lot of Java. And I can't say that, hey, they are from West Coast or East Coast. They're like literally everywhere. But
That's a good point.
uh, you can learn what's trending. Basically, React is trending right now. Like React is the top. I mean, in even in React, there is Next.js that's like trending. Depending upon that, you can say that, hey, these are the jobs, these are the skills that you want to learn, these are the languages that you want to learn. In the back end, there is Node.js, Python, Java. Those probably are the top three, I guess. Java is kind of dying at this point. Like there is Go and other things, Ruby, that are
Hmm.
coming up. I would say learn those skills and it would make it better
Yeah,
for
well,
at least for the new developers coming in. And don't stick to a language. That's the most important part. Try to learn skills that are language agnostic and not language specific.
yeah, because it's pretty interesting. Like when I first came in, Ruby on Rails was like real big, and now it's pretty obsolete. in terms of the technologies I've seen, it seems more like different industries lean towards different software, like banking, finance. They seem to be more Angular based in general, whereas like the smaller startups and all of that, and a lot of companies really React is the dominant front end framework now. But like some startups, they might use Vue. In terms of the back end, I see a lot of C sharp, and a lot of the legacy code, like you mentioned, in VB.net. Java's still out there, but yeah, I kind of feel like it's slowly being replaced by other languages like Golang. So yeah, to me, that's the big point, is that technology shifts in this industry so quickly. So like Roger mentioned, being agnostic to technologies is really important. Like you're gonna find like a lot of the skills transfers over. Um, I would say like one of the mainstays is learning like SQL, because I don't think that's going anywhere anytime soon.
Oh, definitely not. Definitely not. Yeah, I was actually working on some SQL today.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
Yeah, and the crazy thing, it's not too hard to learn.
I think
No, no,
every
I love W3 schools, so shout out to them for. It's kind of like this exists. That's how my manager described
uh,
W3 schools, but I mean,
that's
it gets the job
everybody.
done. I
I
think to your
I
point, Raja, talking
yeah,
about the
go ahead.
difference between or calling it East Coast and West Coast, I think that actually is kind of a farce, because what Kevin was saying, it's more of an industry thing. Because like in startup culture, it's very it's more of whatever technology people want to use and is available, and then not East Coast. I think a lot of the East Coast is finance and enterprise, so I think that's why it is somewhat of a regional thing. But I think we have a lot of banks on this side. We have Truist over here, or no, not Truist. We have some bank over here, and then we have a lot of, like, our main client as well as Fargo Advisors. So that's definitely banking.
And I would say find yourself a good manager and not a good language. If it's even if it's a I don't like Java personally, so even if it's even if you have a Java job, like find yourself a good manager. Forget about the languages are something that you can learn, but managers don't come good managers don't come by easily.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Seems like you have a really supportive team over there. I've actually seen some people drop out of the industry because they didn't get support from management. It's just kind of like uh, teach
Oh,
yourself, and if you don't learn this, we'll fire you, type of thing. And the anxiety levels got so high that they just got out of the industry. So what I noticed is like your manager notices, okay, he's a junior. Take your time, learn the stack. We're gonna stick with this stack. Like knowing a manager that understands that different levels have different levels of progression. Like it's going to take you a little longer to accomplish tasks, and you may ask a lot more questions than somebody who has like 4 years of experience. And a good manager also gives you tasks based on your level. He's not going to have you architecting stuff because you're just coming into the industry.
yeah, no, that's absolutely. Yeah, I mean, Roger, to your point, as far as the man the language, it's like I could definitely see myself falling in the trap of trying to find like the not the unicorn stack, but my dream stack, but then getting stuck in a job where it's like I have no support. I mean, granted, if say I have 20 years of experience and I don't need any support, that's a completely different argument. That's that's not where I'm at, obviously, but I feel like I do have like one of the most supportive managers I could have. And I've never used Vue, I've never used C sharp, I've never used. I mean, the only thing that we have used, or that I have used, that we do use in our current stack is is Tailwind CSS, and but we're using it in such a way that I have no experience. So it's all pretty much brand new. So I the anxiety, Kevin, to your point, is very much there, but acknowledging that you stick with it, and then it's not going to just change tomorrow. We're not just going to go to Angular tomorrow. That is rewarding. So there's that. And it's funny that you mentioned having a good manager that will give you the right task. It's like we started off. He was like, "All right, you're a front end guy. You do a lot with UI, and a lot of your portfolio is front end stuff. How about we work on the front end of this project first?" So we did that, and I was just like, "Yes, thank God." So a lot of what you're saying is kind of like an affirmation for what I have. I feel like I really lucked out, to be honest with you, in terms of management.
I, th- good management or good manager, I guess, gives you time to improve. Like I've seen a lot, like where they just like push the task on you and that's it. They're out of the equation. They don't support you. They don't. They're like, okay, get it done in 2 weeks. After that's it. I'm not gonna talk to you anymore. They don't like ask you like, hey, do you actually know the stack? Do you actually know React? Do you actually know how complex this thing is that you're working on? Do you have the skills to do it? And if you don't, take this much time, create like a proof of concept or something, and then again come back and integrate it into the actual app. That like giving time to somebody, like when a junior developer helps a lot because they learn by themselves, and that will like help out the company like exponentially because you learn something now you'll get faster at it. That will basically save them money by paying less to you, I guess, to get more out of you.
No, yeah, that makes sense. Absolutely, yeah, that absolutely makes sense because I mean, you're more productive if you're. I mean,
Yeah.
if you stress out, and you end up dropping the job, then they're gonna have to spend even even more time and
Mhm.
resources replacing you. So that absolutely makes sense.
I think something interesting is like when I first got in the industry, coding in general, you constantly feel confused, that feeling of confusion, like, man, I don't understand this. Like, this looks super complicated. I don't know if I'll ever get it, but it's kind of like if you stick with it and you pick up on piece after piece after piece over time, eventually it all comes together. And it's like, oh, this isn't hard at all. So like I think this is me personally. I find like managing your psychology is one of the most important things you can do in the industry. Like avoiding getting psyched out and overwhelmed. Like and like Raja and you mentioned having the proper management is extremely important because if you have a manager that's not supporting you and you're just in the industry, you're gonna feel like, oh, I'm not cut out for this. I think I'm gonna quit. So yeah, I think like the psychological aspect isn't really talked about enough. I've had to train my mind to stay in this industry because I've been in all kinds of different situations. Some great management, some not so much. So
I have seen that like why when you're at a job you're like you don't want to tell the manager or your developer or your senior developer, I guess, that you don't know something. you know Nobody teach you this, you didn't teach yourself this, and they ask you to be like, hey, build this React component, and you don't know how to do it. You don't know how to use the library that they provided with you with, and you don't say it outside because you're like ashamed of yourself for not knowing this information. But the truth is you shouldn't have known that information because that's specific to that company. The company built that specific library to themselves. They're not gonna
That's a good
put
point.
it outside. So the manager should be like, hey, take your time and learn it so that you can build it. Or the senior developers should be like pair programming, like sit together, go through this. Something like that. That helped me a lot while doing this at my company because just giving somebody enough time to learn something, they'll learn it. Unless you're like a very, very, very bad developer, you need to give time for people to learn.
so Sean made a comment. I've seen a lot of people on LinkedIn lately talking about how people get fired at Fangs for asking for help. That's so toxic.
Yep, I mean,
Man, I could not imagine.
they expected, that's what I'm saying. They expect you to be at the top of your game, like knowing every library out there. But uh, th- you're not. Nobody, even if you have 200 years of experience, just you still don't know all the libraries in JavaScript, or you still don't know all the new features in React. So there should be time that if somebody else knows it, like if there is a lead developer or somebody that knows this code, they should help you out. They should reach out to you, or you should reach out to them and pair program with them.
Yeah, power in numbers for sure. I mean, that's what the I feel like that's what a development team should be for. But then again, it's like I have opinions, but I don't know how valid they are because I haven't been, you know what I'm saying? I haven't been in the industry long enough. Like I don't. It's just my thought. I'll leave it at that. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, I think it's really important that you had good management coming in, because now it helps you. Like if you ever go to another company, it helps you identify whether it's the management is bad or it's you. Sometimes the management is terrible, but they're putting you on stuff that's beyond your level. They're not giving you enough time to learn, and you think, oh, it's me, I'm not cut out for this job, and you end up quitting. So it's good that you're in a situation where your manager is showing you that, hey, this is what good management looks like. We're going to put you at a task that fits your current level, and we're going to also challenge you so you're growing. Like they're not going to keep you at the same level forever.
That's exactly what's happening. Because I mean, we're doing stuff that's more. I mean, it started off with nothing but what I was familiar with. Like the first week was, well, I mean, we started doing development work on day three, which I was not. I was prepared for that. I just wasn't expecting it. Actually, this is a good question for y'all. I've heard of people they have to wait until like a month or two of shadowing their, I guess, senior developer before they can even touch code. I mean, is that real, or is that just something I saw on Reddit? Or because I feel like I've heard that a few different places where it's like you are not almost allowed to even touch the code base until you've been with the company for a few months and have seen like the conventions and read the documentation and the process.
It depends. I work at a startup, so mine is from day one. You touch the code base
Right.
from day
Yeah.
one. Yeah.
Mhm.
But when you go to bigger companies, the piece of code that you're touching literally affects millions of people, or like thousands of other developers everywhere. Because your team may be working on a very small thing, looking from your side, but it's connected to so many other teams, so many other parts of the company, that you need to learn the whole, like what your team is doing and what's everything, how it's affecting other teams, how it's working in integration with the whole, like distribution of all the other teams. And
That
the
makes sense.
documentation, I think in bigger companies is kind of like a lot. You have to do specifically. They'll comment on it. If you PR your code, there are going to be comments on your PR. They're specific on it because, as I said, it affects not just your team, it affects the whole code base.
Yeah, it's interesting. Things vary vastly from company to company. Like Roger mentioned, startups, they don't have time to keep you away from the code for months, so they're gonna have you on go from day one, touching all kinds of different things, doing all kinds of different tasks. Whereas larger, like the huge companies that can afford to onboard you more slowly and who have like these massive code bases that millions of users are using, they're gonna probably watch you a little while before they let you inject code, because if you mess something up, that could affect, like it can literally lose millions of dollars because your code knocked something out that was supposed to be running before. So yeah, it kind of depends on companies, but I find like startups, they're more likely to get you up and running immediately.
And
Yeah, that makes
I
sense.
think,
I mean, I'm the 11th employee, but we've been a business for over 20 years. So it's like this weird dichotomy of of being in the banking industry for several years, but it's still a very, very small in terms of size, company size, small company. So I guess that's why they had me starting, to y'all's point, on day three. But I'm still not touching anything that could affect clients, because we do work with like Wells Fargo advisors. I mean, that would be an issue. I'll just leave it at that. It would be a huge issue if I mess something up. So that makes sense.
yep, there are code bases. I think Google has a mono repo, so basically like 90% of their code is just from a single repo.
Oh
So
my
when you're
God.
pushing your code through, Like you'll have multiple PRs going through, multiple deployments going through. It has to go through like the senior dev, the staff, the manager, like for it to like go through the whole code base, and like you actually like merging into the main code, I guess. Yeah. So it's kind of
That's
scary when you
incredible.
think about it.
That sounds terrifying to have a single repo for Google. Oh my God. I can't imagine the stress around that.
At your
That's,
current company, do y'all do code reviews?
I believe we do. I obviously haven't been a part of one yet,
Oh,
given that answer. Right now, I've just been doing. We do a bunch of like little commits. I don't know. I think it's different in every company, but like if I change one thing, commit. So I have my own branch that I've been working on. Eventually, I'm 99% sure we do have code reviews,
hmm.
you know, PLs and all that, or PRs.
Yeah, yeah. Once you make the PR, somebody has to review it before it goes into the code base, and they give you feedback like, "Hey, change this variable name to this," or do this kind of thing. They usually have like some kind of built-in software where they can like leave comments under lines of your code and say, "Hey, make these changes before we merge it in." Um,
Yeah,
I think,
we definitely have a code review. I just,
okay.
I'm not there yet.
Yeah, I know a lot of people. Sometimes they feel like they get attacked on the code reviews because there's people leave so many comments on their code. That's something to prepare for. Like, never take it personally, because the code isn't our baby. It's a product we're delivering to the company, and other developers who might be more senior to us, they see things that we might not necessarily see, and they're trying to get us up to standard. But sometimes it's also a personal preference in code reviews where you might have to defend your decision because you know your decision is perfectly valid, but they just have a different idea of how things should be done.
Yeah, I mean, it's not against you, it's against your code that they're commenting. A lot of people take it personally that, hey, why is this guy commenting on my code? Why is he saying this? Why is he saying that? So just think of it as it's against your code, at least in the beginning stages. For the first 6 months or 1 year, like you won't know your code base, or you don't know how to go through your code base. So they will be, I expect, like whenever I join a new company, or like whenever starting at least the first 6 months or 1 year, I it would be nice if I get a lot of comments, and people should expect a lot of comments, because you won't grow without other people commenting on your code. I've seen like every
That
time
makes sense.
somebody commented on my code, there is something that I learned. There is some performance enhancement that I couldn't do, or this way of writing JavaScript is pretty bad, like the industry standard is something else, and I wrote like, multiple lines instead of a single line.
Hmm. Yeah, like personally, I'm trying to avoid developing opinions that are hindering in my performance, I guess. Like, I mean, there's developers have opinions. There's so many opinions. Like, just in terms of picking a front end JavaScript framework, there are a myriad opinions just around that. So, in saying that, I'm trying to avoid having opinions related to like to your point. Like, if there's a comment saying, "Hey, you should do it this way," it's like, great. The guy that knows more is telling me to do it this way. I'm going to do it this way. And that actually leads me to a question I have for both of y'all. In my position, if you were to not even in my position, but if you were to go back to your first developer job, your first year and a half, what would you do differently? And also, what did you do that really set you up for success that you did well?
You want to go first, Raja?
Yeah, I would say at my first developer job, I didn't have much of a much learning. I would say I should have learned React by myself. There was a lot to learn, but at that job, it was like coding every day. There was like I was not growing as a developer basically at that job. They're giving me things to code. I used to code and move on. Like I just like touched React all the time. Maybe if I would have, touched other parts of the code, like if I wrote like few SQL queries, I would say I should have like stepped up and taken the task myself instead of them giving the task to me. There's
Mm.
most of the time you're like happy with what you get, I guess, and you're like, oh, I'm just cruising through. Oh, all my PRs are getting accepted. Everything is going good. That means that you're not growing. If all of your PRs are getting accepted and they're going through smoothly, and your job is going through smoothly, I mean, at least the coding part of the job, I I think it's not you're not growing as a developer. You're just cruising through life. Like there should be some tasks that you can't do. There should be some times that hey, you can't complete this task in a week. You say it's a week, but you couldn't complete it. That means that you're trying to like step up at every few months. Like take a different task. Ask your manager or your senior dev to give you a whole different task. See how you do it. See what the industry is doing. Maybe suggest them that hey, I want to work on this. Let me try to integrate that into my code base. Maybe that can be a side project. I think I've heard this from Sean. I think it's from Sean. He said that do things on the side that helps the company and bring it to the company. Like once you're done, once you're like, hey, this is actually helpful, bring it to the company. Show the developers that hey, I've worked on this on the side. Now I'm ready to show it to you guys, and they may actually tell you to work on it.
Hmm. Interesting.
Yeah, for me, um, I would say my main flaws wasn't necessarily in the coding aspect, it's more so in the social aspect. Like, a lot of times with coders, we were kind of introverted. We just want to come in, get the job done. We don't want to talk a lot. Sometimes we don't want to joke around or any of that. But like, you're at a company and there's people all around you, and learning to integrate with the people and form relationships, that's really what's gonna keep you afloat. Because if you're a good coder, there's somebody who's a similar skill set to you, but he's cool with the boss, he's always talking to the boss, they're hanging out after work. When there's cuts coming, they're going to cut you first because he's formed a relationship with the boss. Or if you need help, if you kind of come off as like cold and you don't really talk to anybody, people might not be as willing to help you as much as the guy that they're laughing with all the time. And being social, that's really going to propel your career as you get higher up. Because once you get higher up, it's less about your technical ability and more about your ability to communicate with a team and help elevate others. And if you're not a good speaker, or I'm not going to say necessarily speaker, but if you're not able to talk to different people without rubbing them the wrong way, you're not going to be able to put together an efficient team. And this is
Mm.
another thing. One more thing is, when I first went into my job, the coding culture back then, you're kind of like considered like a rock star. So you could come in laid back. Like I said, a startup was really laid back. And, I would come to work like really underdressed, right? Like I even came to work with sweatpants on one time. And, the boss never said anything, but if you know people really judge that kind of stuff. Like I've noticed guys that they're pretty good coders, but they always stay dressed really well, and they've got promoted to these higher roles way quicker than the guy who's an excellent coder, but he looks sloppy, he's not a good communicator. So like making sure your job may let you dress down, but I personally wouldn't. Because as soon as you walk through the door, people are already judging you, and the more you look the part, the quicker you're going to get promoted to that higher level.
And
Was it
somebody,
a dress for the job you want, not the job you have, kind of thing?
Exactly. Yep.
I think somebody commented like, if no one knows you, no one can vouch for you. Yes, we touched on this topic with a on the podcast with Brian. You should go watch that podcast. It's pretty good. Like you need to put yourself out there. That's the most, like, I missed that one in my first company, I guess. Put yourself out there. If you're doing some, if no one knows that you're working on it, no one's going to recognize you for it. I mean, unless you have a good manager who actually knows what you're doing and vouches for you all the time. But most of the time, like, the manager doesn't know what you're working on. And like, if it's a small company, yes, but if it's like a larger if you ever go to a larger company, the manager doesn't know what you're working on. The lead developer knows, the other developer, your coworkers know, but the manager doesn't know. When time comes for a promotion or something, since the manager doesn't know anything, you have to fight a little bit harder to get
Mhm.
that promotion, compared to another
Mm.
developer who's putting himself out there, who's like, hey, I'm working on this, I'm working on that,
Mhm.
like talking to people and like communicating, saying that, hey, this is this, and like uh, getting new ideas into the team, and like uh, telling them that, hey, this can work, even if it doesn't work out, even if the manager says no. Just you uh,
The
putting
initiative.
time outside of your work, not outside of your work, I guess, but maybe outside of your work, taking time to actually make the code base better, or the communication between the team better. Hey, this tool can help us out, like Slack can help us out, do this. Those are some things that matter a lot in big companies.
Yeah, I definitely agree with Roger. And Sean Bullock, he's a co-host who's a CTO. He also mentioned communication is the key. And yeah, like another thing is like make sure you're not only spending all your time coding. I should have been more social, getting out more, networking more. That kind of stuff really matters because like you mentioned on LinkedIn, just because we talked, now you're on the podcast. You know what I mean? Like so many opportunities come about just by reaching out to people and not being shut in all day. Like that was kind of my problem before. I was like too insulated, too focused on just getting my technical skills up to par.
Yeah, like stepping out of the comfort zone almost. It's like we built this lifestyle where we could work from home for some
Hmm.
of us. And it has its benefits, but it like it's kind of like modern society. Like we don't have to hunt for our food. Therefore, if we don't exercise, we'll get fat and lazy, kind of thing. So it's like it's like the same thing. It's like you have to actively work on your soft skills, which I was in sales. If I wasn't in sales, I would be like the most introverted person ever. Like I probably wouldn't have even like if you invited me on this podcast and I had been in that same mindset without the sales experience, I would have been like, oh god, terrifying, can't do it. So I think like every role has some kind of opportunity to like stretch and grow you, like push the envelope. And the way that y'all are describing like developing as a developer, this is a better way of putting that, but growing as a developer, the way y'all are describing their some of the things, they're like affirmations, but some of them are new to me. So I'm definitely gonna be like watching this podcast over again just to take notes.
The I wanted to ask you this, that how many people, like, or your friends or something, in boot camp do you have jobs right now? What percentage, like a rough estimate?
So it was pretty low. I'm not gonna lie. It was probably after the first 3 months, only okay. So 30 people started the boot camp. I'll just start from the beginning. So I think it was 30 or 35 people started the boot camp. I think 18 people finished the program, and out of the 18, I think 4 or 5 people got jobs, and then 2 years later, you know, I think half of us at least are employed. But it seems like a lot of people were overwhelmed by the boot camp. I've heard mixed things about the boot camp that I attended. Personally, it was a good experience for me. I had a TA that was a little. It was kind of like, oh, look at me, I'm Mr. TA, kind of thing. So that was a little hard to work with, and that definitely impeded it didn't impede anything, but it definitely rubbed me the wrong way. But outside of that, it was a good experience. But I would say just above half got a job.
Half.
which is
Oh, you mean 20?
pr-
Okay, yeah. Half
yeah,
left the boot camp and half got the jobs. Okay.
yeah.
Because
So
I
it's not great numbers at
Yeah,
all.
because I see like boot camps advertising as if like everybody's getting the job. Everybody who's
Mhm.
joining the boot camp is getting the job, and like they're getting the job in the next 3 months or something. But when I go on LinkedIn, it's like 10% or 20% of the people who go to boot camp actually get the job, and that too not because of the boot camp. That's one of the biggest reasons.
Yeah.
They go out, they network, they get
That's what did
mentors
it
or
for
they
me.
have their friends somewhere. I'm like, what is the point of these ads that these boot camps keep pushing towards?
Yeah.
I guess I guess 95% of these people eventually get jobs
Yeah.
through
Like
their own means.
something I find out about this industry is that it always comes down to you. Like if you want to be successful, you will, and you always have to have the attitude of like I can get it done. Like I might hit my head against the wall 100 times, but on that 101st time, that's when I'll figure it out. Kind of like like playing like Call of Duty or something. When you first start out, you're gonna die over and over and over and over, but start piecing together little strategies, little tips, and then start getting better. So like even with the boot camp thing, the boot camp can't put any of us in a job, and even if they did, if we didn't do what we're supposed to do, we're gonna just fall right out the industry because we're not preparing ourselves. So it all comes down to us taking ultimate accountability and saying like, if nobody's doing it for me, I'm gonna find a way to do it myself. Like I've had to do that on several of these jobs. Like nobody's really helping me with this particular thing, so I have to spend hours outside of work researching and learning this particular aspect. And the good thing about that is the more self-motivated you become, you eventually become a go-to guy. You become the expert on the team in this particular thing. And that's how you really get promotions fast. Like, oh, hey, Patrick, he knows the answer to this question. And when like so many people keep bringing your name up, like, oh yeah, ask Patrick. He should know the answer. Your manager, your boss is looking at that like, oh man, Patrick, he really knows what he's doing. Let me make him the team lead. So I would say like here's another thing, like a lot of times at jobs, if you get a lot of work, some people get angry at it, but you should take that in stride because that's giving you more experience and that's going to allow you to move up quicker. And I should have mentioned that before as what I would have done like differently at my last job, because when you first starting out, you feel like underqualified. So you're not going to volunteer for stuff. You're going to try to stay away, like stay in the background. But I don't want to fail at this task. But, sometimes volunteer for something that's challenging and, you're going to struggle. But after you struggle, you're going to have knowledge that you didn't have before. And you're going to demonstrate to the company that you're somebody who steps up and goes after things as opposed to waiting for it to come to you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
I
a
mean,
good point.
not every manager is gonna keep on giving you something for you to grow on. They're gonna think about the company too because they need you to code. They need to work on. Let's just say if you're a front end developer, they need you to work on the front end. If you want to learn something from the back end or something, you have to do it by yourself. Like you have to step up and volunteer for that work. They're not gonna hand it to you because they want the front end to be done. But if you want to volunteer, put in the extra time to learn the back end, put in the extra time to actually like go and learn the steps and be like make your manager trust you that hey, this person can actually do the work.
So
Yeah, to
Sean
that
Bullock.
point. So go
Oh,
ahead.
go ahead. Oh yeah, I was saying Sean
I was,
Bullock mentioned an interesting point. He said more work is good, but learn your boundaries. Becoming a bottleneck in the spotlight is unpleasant. So yeah, you do kind of have to balance that out too.
I was gonna say, I was thinking about as far as like asking for work, essentially, on top of what I'm doing, since my workload is like really low and manageable right now, given my skill level. I was gonna see if I could do like more unit tests for C sharp, just so I could get used to working in C sharp. I guess my question is, if y'all were in my position and you came from one language, and it's like the idea of being language agnostic. I've heard that before, and I acknowledge the value in that, and I definitely want to be there. How would you, I guess, specifically learn going from JavaScript to C sharp? Because I know it's like it's strong typed, it's less forgiving in some ways. I mean, and there's a lot more. You have like 7 or 8 um, integer types, for example. I can't remember the number, but in JavaScript you have number. So it's like learning these differences. But I guess how would y'all approach that if you were me or anyone else in my position?
I would
Sure.
say,
I'll go ahead, Roger.
yeah, I would say take time out of outside of your work, because this is not something that you learned at boot camp. This is something that you have to learn by yourself, and you should learn it outside of your work. Even though it is bad to do things outside of your work time or something, I personally, like, if I want to learn something, I do it outside of my work, because I want to. You're not only doing this for your work, you're doing this for yourself, because you want to be good at it, because your manager is not going to tell you to, write unit tests or do all this, because he doesn't know you. You need to put yourself out there saying, hey, I've learned all this unit tests, now give me a task that contains unit tests. So you need to be confident in yourself. For you to be confident in yourself, you have to go out there, and don't think of it as a JavaScript to C sharp. Just go learn C sharp.
Yeah, and
There is
you
a
would,
point between like trying to like juggle two languages, where like, oh, JavaScript is something that I learned, I'm going to take all the concepts and put it in C sharp. No, sometimes you just have to learn a language for your company, for work, basically, not the company. Just learn the language. If you want to improve in it, go ahead, do that extra work.
yeah, I agree. But like from going from JavaScript to C sharp, TypeScript is kind of like the in between the two
Yeah,
languages. So like TypeScript allows you to optionally type stuff so that you're not like always wrestling with types, which can be really confusing as a new developer. So I would say, like if you want to go from JavaScript to C sharp, go to TypeScript because it's kind of like similar between the very two. And then, once you're comfortable with types, then you can go to something like C sharp, which like requires you to be much more cognizant of types. But yeah, I would say like just like how you learned JavaScript before when you didn't know it, you just learn things piece by piece by piece. So when you look at C sharp, you're gonna see, hey, a lot of this stuff carries over. Like a lot of stuff carries over between programming languages, conditionals, loops, etc. The core programming concepts carry over. It's just like, the syntax might be different, or one is more strongly typed versus the other. So yeah, the key really is just to uh get a like find a small C sharp application, run through it, try to recreate it, like play around with it, and then do some research on those elements that you don't really know, and also realize you don't have to know everything. Like you don't have to know the complete C sharp type system. You really, what happens is it's like, okay, I don't know this particular thing, I'm using a number here, what type of number? Then you realize, okay, there's ints, and then there's like floats and decimals and stuff like that, and depending on your need, you can just like tailor your research a little more. You're never going to know everything. So, and Sean Bullock said multiple languages helps, like SQL and C sharp, when they do different things but need to cooperate to make the app work. But if they can replace each other, better to learn one at first.
Yeah,
that
So
definitely makes sense.
and
I've heard
also
about people, they try
difference.
to learn like everything all at once, but
mhm.
they don't like dive deep into one thing, which
And
I could see that being an issue. Yeah, now I have a little experience with TypeScript, working in React. That coming from my mentor, he said that something to the effect of it's like JavaScript developers should know TypeScript. That was his words. I don't know if that was an opinion or if that's true. I see heads are nodding, so maybe it's true. um, so it was crazy because I was learning about like event types. Like I didn't know that like there was a mouse click event type. Like I thought that was just an event. I didn't know it was a type.
Mhm.
So there's so much to this side. Like the more I learn, the less I really feel like I understand, which I guess is, you know, it's part of the battle. But
Yeah.
it's good. I'm enjoying it so far.
Yeah, I think types scare a lot of people away because they seem like something crazy, but it's really like, okay, a variable is pretty much like a box that you put different things in. In JavaScript, you know, it's loosely typed. You can put anything in this particular box. You can put like a toy, you can put a computer, you can put whatever in that box, in that variable. Whereas like something that's strongly typed, you put in a label, like only this can go inside this box, like you know, only toys go inside this box, whereas only computers go in that box. You're pretty much with types saying that only this type of thing can go in this variable. And you know, when you really look at it, like you mentioned, there's like, you know, 8 different number types. You know what I mean? But a lot of them are really the same thing, but like just different sizes of that particular thing. Like a float deals with decimals, whereas a double is pretty much similar to a float, except it's, you know, larger. So there's a lot less types than you would think. It's just like, you know, it's the same thing, but it's different sizes of the same thing.
And I would say when you're learning something, like if you want to learn something, there is a difference between learning for your career and learning for the company. Those are two different things. If you want to learn something for your career, you need to actually like learn it outside of your work, like put work in. But if you want to learn it for your company, that's a different thing. So you need to think about, hey, do I want this as a career? Then it's okay to chill, you know, it's okay not to learn new things. It's just the company. The next company you go to may or may not have this. But if it's like, oh, I need to learn JavaScript for my whole career, I'm going to be in JavaScript for the next like 20 years or something, or at least 5 years, I guess. Go ahead and learn it.
That makes sense. Yeah, I've actually been putting off. I've been wanting to learn like the 3JS library and React Fiber, WebGL, that whole realm. I've been wanting to learn that for a while, but I kept telling myself like, well, it's not going to help me get a job because no one's, you know, the amount of people hiring for that kind of work is so much smaller. So I've just been putting it off and putting it off and putting it off, and I really just need to learn it because I want to. Because it's like, why would I not want to do it if I want to do it? You know, to that point. But no, this has been very informative. I feel like this was all just like teaching me things for an hour. I feel like it's been great. I've been really enjoying this.
Yeah, man, we definitely like to have you back, especially when we have like Sean, Terrence, and some of the other guys on the podcast, so you can ask even more guys. But yeah, I know it's the top of the hour, and I got to get out of here. Did y'all have any closing thoughts?
I mean, don't believe what they say in bootcamp ads. Not everybody's getting a job. That's what I'm
Amen
gonna
to
say.
that. If you want a job network, if you want help with networking, direct message me and we'll talk.
All right, thanks everybody for tuning in. Thank you for commenting, Amani, Terrence, Sean. We'll catch y'all next time. Peace.